Hello, and welcome to the Black Tower Podcast. My name is Aaron, and this is your midweek reaction bonus update, whatever you want to call it, episode. That's what this is. We are going to talk your listener feedback. I got a couple of tweets here from a couple of different people, and I'm just going to read through them and kind of react to them. I think at least one of them is from the most recent episode, the episode about Whitecloaks, and the other one, I'm not sure which episode it was that this person is reacting to, but I'm just going to go with it. So at first, I'm just going to jump in. On Twitter, we have a user whose handle is Father of One. His name is Dennis Houston. He says, at Tower Podcast, what if Ishmael, and that's how he wrote it, I think it's Ishmael, wasn't sealed up with the rest of the Forsaken? In the prologue of The Eye of the World, he is talking to Lewis Theron after the taint has been on Sidon. Just a thought. Love the podcast. You two work well together. First off, thank you for saying how much you love our podcast. We love you and everybody who listens. And even if you only listen once, you're still awesome. But yeah, we were both, Andrew and I are both really intrigued with this question. It's really great. I'm not sure which episode it comes from, but I'm going to take a shot at it anyways. So I'm pulling this directly from the Wheel of Time wiki page, and it says, quote, when the Dark One's prison was sealed, it is thought that Ishmael was only partially sealed behind it, in contrast to Agenor and Bathamal, who were merely sealed too close to the edge, and thus susceptible to the passage of time. What is known for certain is that his soul was spun out of the Dark One's prison and into the pattern from time to time after the prison had been sealed. In fact, Ishmael may not have been initially bound at all, since he visited Lewis Talaman Theron, apparently in person, after the seals on the Dark One's prison had been placed, which is what the initial quote was talking about. So he comes to Lewis Theron after he's mad from the taint on Sidon. He's gone mad. He's killed his whole family. He's earned the name the Kinslayer, right? And then Ishmael shows up. And it's not like he's had time to get spun out of the pattern again. Like some people are saying, maybe he got spun out of the pattern again. I don't think so. It hasn't been enough time yet. It just happened, and he just killed his whole family. He just went mad. Nobody really knows what's going on yet. So I don't think that's what's going on. I think somehow Ishmael managed to escape being sealed away, or he is allowed to live out the rest of this life before he dies, and then he gets sealed away again. Regardless, after the seals were placed on Sidon and Sidon was tainted, I just went over all that. He has a mostly one-sided conversation with Lewis Theron, and Ishmael heals him so that he can understand what he's done. This realization caused Lewis Theron to commit suicide, leaving a furious Ishmael to wait for him to be reborn. Aran, son of Melon, son of Sianar, born roughly 50 AB, who is a fictional in-universe historian, has a theory based on Ishmael being thrown out and touching the world for specific periods of time. Aran had heard claims that people had encountered him as long as 40 years after the sealing of the bore. Using lost manuscripts, Aran concluded it may have taken some time for Ishmael to be brought into the prison with the remainder of the Forsaken, and might possibly have been thrown out in a regular, or I think irregular is the real word cycle. There's ample evidence to now support this hypothesis, such as interviews from Dark Friends saying that as early as 983 NE, they were receiving instructions from somebody calling himself Baalzamon. It is possible the cycle lasts 1,000 years, as the Trolloc Wars and War of the 100 Years and events of the current time are all 1,000 years apart, and Ishmael is known to have played a significant part in all of them. Ultimately, it appears as though once every 1,000 years, Ishmael was released from the Dark One's prison for 40-year intervals, and he played a key role in destabilizing human civilization each time he was released. So I think that's the most likely scenario, is that he didn't get sealed initially, but he was ultimately kind of restricted in what he could do. And even though he wasn't locked in with everybody else, he kind of has this freedom to move about every 1,000 years, and he gets 40 years to do it. It seems to be the most likely scenario. Andrew has written a little note here that says, I can only agree with what Aaron has already said here. It makes perfect sense to me. I'd like to discover how Ishmael was able to avoid the sealing, though. Yeah, that's where I'm at. I think the interesting thing is not so much that he didn't get sealed. It's how did it happen? How did he avoid that sentence of being sealed when the war was sealed with all the other Forsaken, all 13 of them? If anybody knows, feel free to hit us back on Twitter and kind of help me out here, because I'm kind of at a loss as to how he was able to do it. I know he's powerful. He's one of the more powerful of the Forsaken, but I mean, was he that powerful to be able to just, with the strength of his will, avoid being sealed up? I don't know. Moving on, we have a note here from Bookworm200, whose Twitter is at Sejuwunmi. It's SEJIWUNMI. I know I'm not even pronouncing that right. They say, good episode. I wasn't surprised that Galad became a Whitecloak. I think that it was foreshadowed right from the start. He was supposed to have the temperament of what they were supposed to be. Good people who always did the right thing. I actually liked his arc. BTW, Tom is not a creep. He's obviously talking about they're obviously talking about our last episode about Whitecloaks. Yeah, I wasn't surprised that Galad became a Whitecloak either, and that he rose as high as he did inside the organization. And I think Andrew and I were talking about it, and we think that maybe it's even a good thing that he became a Whitecloak, because he has this such a extreme sense of justice, and he pulls his sense of right and wrong purely from legalism, to where it can be awkward at times, his interactions with people who are supposed to be friends and people who are family. I have a hard time with him, especially people like Elaine, who like to break the rules a little bit. You can see how growing up with him as a brother or half brother would be difficult. So I see where the hate comes from. But I think he was properly put into the role of a Whitecloak, and because of his sense of legalism and right and wrong, it's possible that he steered the Whitecloak organization back to where they were supposed to be in the first place, and they end up helping out at the last battle. They come into the fold and become part of Rand's people that he can count on to help. I don't necessarily think this means everybody in the Whitecloaks is good again or whatever, but I think the organization took a turn and started back to where they're supposed to be. Andrew says, I agree. He's always possessed that sort of righteous mentality that was supposed to be the central focus of the Children of the Light, Galad really brings the children back to their original intent, I believe. They were lost for so long, largely due to manipulation and greed, I believe. It was good to see them completely on the right side again. So I think we're both kind of agreed there that it was the right place for him. And as much as hate as he gets from the fan base, and well, everybody gets hate. Rand gets hate. Just everybody hates everybody. That's what it can feel like sometimes. But really, we do love different characters, and not that I love Galad, but I like him in this role as a Whitecloak. Before that, he's always like this kind of too good, perfect little boy with his perfect looks and his perfect sword skills, and he's going to run and tell mom whenever anything happens that he doesn't like or isn't quote unquote right. So I think it's definitely a step in the right direction for both his character and for the Whitecloaks. Yeah, and I think that's pretty much all we have to say about that. We're agreed that Tom's not a creep. He can be read that way sometimes, but I think it's inference. People are guessing at things that aren't really there. And we've talked about that before, so I'm not going to go into that ad nauseum. And I think that's pretty much all the fan or listener reactions that we had this week. I just want to remind everybody that we have an episode coming up on Friday that will be a full episode. It's actually the first of a multi-part series. I'm not going to give away what the topic is, but let's just say this. If we were back in the Two Rivers and Nynaeve caught us doing this, we would get thumped for sure. So yeah, I'll leave you to figure out what that means. In the meantime, if you have questions for us, or questions for us to ask the ladies from the White Tower who are going to be our guests over the Christmas break, email them to us at blacktowerpod@gmail.com, and you can tweet us at Tower Podcast. And we will save those up, and we'll ask them when we do this upcoming joint episode that we are really excited about. In the meantime, keep listening, keep the feedback coming. We love interacting with everybody on Twitter and Facebook, and we're getting some great emails from people just really encouraging us, and that's really what we need is encouragement. So thank you all for listening. For us at the Black Tower, I am Aaron, and we will see you this weekend.